April's consumer price index is out. Joining us now to discuss is Katie Stockton, founder and managing partner of Fairlead Strategies. Welcome back to the show, Katie. Okay, so CPI rose 0.4% in April on a seasonally adjusted basis. What do you make of this?
Well, from a technical perspective, the market does seem to like it. We're seeing a positive reaction, but really the action is somewhat insignificant in terms of where both Bitcoin and Ether have traded of late. They recently broke down below their 50-day moving averages, so this feels like a bit of an oversold bounce following those breakdowns. And those breakdowns, to me, overrule essentially what's happening this morning, in that the short-term momentum is likely to remain to the downside with room to the next support levels.
Can you explain that a little bit more? You're suggesting a breakdown is likely to come with major support around $25,000. Can you just unpack this a little more for us?
That's right. So Bitcoin had seen what we call a base breakout, and that was associated with the failures among the regional banks. That nice bid has sort of gone away of late. And we expect a pullback essentially to the base breakout point. And that was about 25,200 for Bitcoin. We would see that as potentially a nice entry point for those who are interested in investing in the cryptocurrency market. So that 25,200, that's where we have a better chance of seeing oversold conditions really make an impact and yield another leg higher. There is still decent intermediate term momentum behind Bitcoin, and yet it's somewhat neutral, I would say, at this time, but still within the context of an uptrend. And that uptrend is defined in part by that support, but also something called the cloud model. The cloud model for technical analysts is essentially a way to understand the prevailing trend over different time frames, and also as a gauge of potential support and resistance. So that cloud model is pointing higher intermediate term, even though we expect a deeper short-term pullback.
Katie, if I understand correctly, you have a short-term bearish perspective on Ether. Can you explain why that is?
Well, they have remained positively correlated as usual, and we also saw Ether take out its 50-day moving average as a short-term setback, reflecting weakened momentum within its uptrend as well. So we're looking for downside follow-through there too, irrespective of this morning's action, with support around 1755 for Ether. That would be a very natural place there for oversold conditions to yield some stabilization. That's a bit more meaningful than what we expect right now. So we're looking for more of the same. With that, we're actually looking for Ether, somewhat surprisingly, to outperform Bitcoin. So as they pull back, we're actually looking for Bitcoin to underperform, and that's simply based on the ratios that we track, which became somewhat overextended Bitcoin versus Ether. So short-term underperformance possible by Bitcoin, but within a longer-term trend that does favor Bitcoin over not just Ether, but most altcoins.
Yeah, you've also noted that Bitcoin has performed roughly in line to Ether since mid-March. Can you unpack that a little more for us?
Yeah, so the inline performance has really been somewhat characteristic of the whole market. And by the whole market, I mean just any risk assets. We've seen consolidation both in absolute and also relative terms. And what it reflects is a balance between supply and demand, essentially indecisiveness among the participants in the marketplace. So buyers and sellers are relatively balanced. And that's where we've had that sort of neutralization in the relative performance between the two. But from an intermediate term perspective, as mentioned, Bitcoin got a little bit stretched versus Ether, and this is, I think, part and parcel to that as well. So looking for that consolidation to give way to minor outperformance by Ether, but within the context of a broader trend favoring Bitcoin. So it does reflect some indecisiveness out there, and that's very normal when the market is somewhat directionless. We really haven't had much of a trend to the upside or downside with any duration of late. So that's something that can be very frustrating and yields these consolidation phases.
Katie, thank you very much for joining us this morning. That was Katie Stockton, founder and managing partner at Fairlead Strategies.